everyone, and welcome back to another report, one that is a bit wild in its scale. WB Games, so that is Lord of the Rings, Batman, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, and a whole bunch else, well, they're reportedly up for sale, and that is with a bunch of gaming's largest names being interested in making an acquisition. And that's an acquisition that would have just massive implications for the development resources in terms of the owned studios of WB Games and for the IP for whoever purchases WB Games should it happen. So, suffice to say, there is a hell of a lot to analyze with today's video and lots to get into. Now, if you like more gaming news, then of course, hit that sub button and like button. It seriously helps us out. And if you'd like a bunch of, fun loot from our studio's art team, including the Druid class pin and the daily news catch-up service that we do, plus other stuff, then the Patreon is the place. It seriously helps us, so thank you. And with that said, let's get into the story. Well, today it's not Twitter drama, it's not game drama, it is business drama, because one of the fairly large publishers could be purchased up by one of the others, which would certainly be quite interesting. Basically here, right, to get into it, according to the usual familiar with the matter sources, AT&T are actually in the market to sell WB Games, Warner Brothers Games, to the tune of $4 billion. Now, Warner Brothers Games, that, they own TT Games, Rocksteady Studios, you'll know them from, as an example, Batman, NetherRealm Studios, Monolith Productions, and Avalanche, as well as several other studios across North America and the Portkey publishing label for the Harry Potter titles. And that really is quite a lot. And this deal may also involve some sort of commercial licensing agreement whereby AT&T can continue to earn revenue from their IP. So that's basically the situation, right? That Warner Brothers Games could actually be right up there for sale, and that a bunch of, the EAs and the Activisions may actually be interested in purchasing it. And if somebody was to purchase this, they certainly would get a lot of studios and a lot of IP. Now, you might be wondering, why would you sell this games division? I mean, come on, the Batman games did pretty well. Well, in October of 2019, an activist hedge fund called Elliott Management took a $3.2 billion stake in AT&T. Now, Elliott are one of the world's largest, their most powerful activist investors, and, they issued a 4-part proposal to AT&T. Now, look, here's the deal, okay? If you know anything about Elliott Management and Paul Singer, the sort of billionaire guy behind him, well, look, activist investor basically just means an investor who is going to make an investment basically to try to get a seat at the table and make some change happen. Now, that could be in a pro-workers' rights or environmental thing like what we saw with the recent Bobby Kotick story, but in this situation, it really is less that. It's basically, Elliott are quite often, they'll go in, they'll replace leadership, do a bunch of short-term things to pump up a stock price, and then they'll sell and basically make a really, really big payday. As another recent example, Elliott are on the board of Twitter, and one of the things they're trying to do right now is to oust Jack Dorsey as CEO. So, for this, Elliott wanted to eliminate $5 billion in costs, divest certain businesses, make management changes, and scale back expansion. Basically, a big focus on efficiency, and that makes sense. Elliott often do make short-term moves to boost that stock value, and then they end up selling off. And there's times they've left quite a situation in their wake. So with WB Interactive, right, so often being a bit of a footnote in AT&T's financial reports, I mean, come on, it's AT&T. They're not really talking about Batman much in their financials, are they? So, with it not really being the biggest focus for them, it's very possible that yes, this gaming division could be classified as a non-core asset and then be given the chop. And I'd say that's especially because it seems to be a non-essential thing that actually does carry with it quite a bit of value. And yeah, AT&T, if they made that sell, hey, maybe they'd make a tidy $4 billion for selling an asset that they seem to forget about sometimes. Now, let's talk about who could actually buy this. According to the rumors, Take-Two Interactive, EA Games, and Activision Blizzard have all been mentioned, though none of them have made formal comment regarding the possibility of a sale, which, I mean, yeah, sure, obviously they wouldn't, right? EA and Activision Blizzard were unavailable for comment, while Take-Two and AT&T themselves actually actively refused to comment when they were asked by CNBC. So it would make a lot of sense, right, for these big publishers to be interested here. But that said, $4 billion. That's a lot of dollar, a pretty extreme amount. That's not a purchase that would be made lightly. Now, WB do oversee a variety of franchises across a range of games, loads of studios. There's single player, there's multiplayer. There are certainly a lot of ways to monetize, right? Now, Strauss Zelnick, of course, who is the head of Take-Two Interactive, he recently has been talking about the company's desire to increase and, diversify their gaming output. And if you watched our video on the state of Take-Two Interactive that we did rather recently, yeah, they have a serious number of games coming out in the next 5 years. It's the largest portfolio ever. Now, the company are making significant investments in their pipeline to achieve that goal. And Zelnick actually said back in August 2019 that mergers and acquisitions are actually a part of their strategy, and that some, what he calls inorganic growth, would help them achieve their aim of diversification. And I suppose when you're a situation where, it's all about your NBA or, your GTA, then yeah, maybe more diversification would be nice, so you've got better sort of stable yearly numbers. Now, Take-Two might not be too thrilled about the prospect of, the commercial licenses over full ownership, based on, the all-or-nothing nature they had with the Kerbal 2 situation that we cover in the channel as well. But still, they are interested in inorganic growth, right? In purchasing, in doing acquisitions, so this could actually be a thing that they'd be in on. Then, as for EA, it's hard to say there. They, of course, do have a history with the Harry Potter franchise and the Lord of the Rings games back in the day, so there is that. And hey, maybe you could FIFA Ultimate Team up your Harry Potter RPG or something if you really wanted to. But then, of course, for them and for all the other companies, you've got stuff like Batman, that's a huge IP. You've got Lord of the Rings, that's another huge IP, especially with a over $1 billion Amazon show being in the works with that IP. But that being said, $4 billion is a lot of money, and EA might not be willing to pay it. Back in 2017, mergers and acquisitions firm PitchBook reported that EA had spent $2.9 billion on its 10 biggest acquisitions since 1992. So a $4 billion splurge would be pretty darn out of the ordinary for EA. But I'll tell you who it would not be out of the ordinary for. Activision Blizzard. Get this. They spent $5.9 billion for King, the Candy Crush bunch, in 2016. So a deal with Warner Brothers that could open up some interesting new avenues for Activision Blizzard. They have access to things like Mortal Kombat that I suppose would fill a bit of a glaring gap in their catalog, but it's also something they could probably run rampant with some sort of live service if they really wanted to. And then hey, if you wanted to do Lego Overwatch, I suppose you could do that because, of course, WB Games have been super connected to the Lego, the Lego games for quite some time indeed. And then, of course, I think, the properties like Batman and stuff, that would just bolster Activision's single-player offerings, which, outside of the remasters of Spyro or Crash, have been a little bit lacking, right? So I think that's basically, it's basically a situation where for most of these companies, more IP, more games could be a good thing. Now, for Activision Blizzard, one of their great strengths as a business has been efficiency, right? They've really went in hard on a small number of things, they've got them super profitable, and that's basically what Activision's been doing. This would be a bit of a departure from that, but also it would quickly get them some diversification, and given how they lost Destiny and so far haven't replaced it, perhaps that would be some of the diversification they actually would want. And then really there's a situation here where, it's $4 billion that this is going to be going up for, supposedly. Who the hell else is going to be able to afford that? Because even the likes of Embracer, Embracer is really big. That's, THQ Nordic and all of them. They're in that umbrella, Koch Media, but they're not big enough to buy that, and I doubt that over in Japan they're going to be really wanting those Western media properties. So right now, we're in a situation where there's a lot to speculate on this story, but it's worth remembering that the sale has not been confirmed, right? It is in the rumor mill. AT&T only closed their acquisition of Time Warner in 2018, so that's not a whole lot of time to start jettisoning assets. But then again, it's Paul Singer, it's Elliott Management. If you follow what goes on in hedge fund land and that side of the economy, you'll know that Elliott Management are a pretty ruthless bunch, and they can get some serious stuff done, be it for good or ill. Certainly has been ill in some cases with them. And their influence does appear to be substantial. They've already managed to effect significant leadership change within a few months of becoming involved in AT&T, and then over in other realms of trying to get rid of Jack Dorsey from Twitter. A lot of stuff going on there. Now, the gaming division, therefore, seems to be in this unique position where it's super valuable because video games are really big, but but completely non-essential because it seems like AT&T are just not that big into the vidya overall as, in their business. So, AT&T could be quite happy to sell, to have another company, take in the reins there. That would get them a whole bunch of money. It would also cut down on their costs. That could be pretty good for their stock price. And that's the sort of thing that Elliott management would probably want so that, they could then sort of sell it, right? Because that's kind of what they've done in the past. So there you go. That's basically what's up there. Now, when you actually think about WB Games itself, it's a bit wild. We did a video, a deep dive video into the state of WB Games. And we were surprised, just how much IP they have, how much potential video game they could be putting out, but also how they really had not been doing all that much in the grand scheme of things. Certainly, I would imagine that the likes of EA or Activision Blizzard would probably get more out of them, right? And then I suppose there's also, would some of those companies just increase the development resources at the disposal of those companies? As an example, Activision Blizzard, one of the reasons why they actually decided to sell Destiny 2 is basically because it was taking up so much of their development resources. That's actually one of the things that they stated was pretty major in their sales decision. So maybe for them, yeah, they could get all these IPs, these in-development games, but perhaps they could also just get more development resources, which maybe for them would make sense. Then again, I suppose for customers, if we're going to bring this back, back to sort of ground level and what this could actually mean for us, if you're at a situation where this, where WB Games is basically owned by a parent that is a bit more interested in actively, maximally, using the assets that WB Games has in terms of its IP and its teams, that could mean more video games. And I suppose for the people who like those studios and like those IPs, that could be a good thing. And then again, it's also, WB Games, they were pretty notorious with their microtransactions, so I've got to wonder how any of those things would change if, they ended up finding themselves under new management. But there you go, that's that story. Right, if you want some more content to listen to, we put up so much stuff recently on the channel, but if you want to listen to some things that are a bit more tied into this video, I mean, come on, the State of the Publisher series is the clear place to go. We've got one in Activision Blizzard, we've got one in EA, we've got one in WB Games, so if you want to learn what's going on, and of course, Take-Two Interactive, if you just want to know, right, like a big view of what the industry is, well, hey, that's the perfect series for you. So, if you want something else, watch that. Thank you very much for watching this video, though. Be sure to like and sub if you enjoyed it. And with that said, I will see you next time.